And let's look at another reason to be hopeful, because there's a great team of engineers in Mullingar who have been for the last few months working painstakingly away at developing cost-effective ventilators. And we met Barry Kennedy some months ago, the irony being that he and his team are in an old tobacco factory, of all places, in Mullingar. But let's catch up on their progress. Barry, good morning.
Good morning, Will.
I should point out you're Chief Executive of Irish Manufacturing Research. In a line, what was Irish Manufacturing Research put on this earth to do?
Well, our focus was to demystify, de-risk and deliver emerging technologies for manufacturing companies here on the island of Ireland, and to help them with these types of technologies and how it could help them improve productivity, energy efficiency, and make them much more sustainable.
So what headway have you made with ventilators?
Well, we got involved in development of two different ventilators, one with MIT out of Massachusetts and Boston, and another one with one of the top 5 leading experts in the world in the area of ventilators, a person called Steve Tunnell, based out of San Diego. And we got together once we saw the issue occurring with respect to COVID and how it was beginning to take over, I guess, the world, and there was a crisis in all the hospitals. And we developed 2 different types of systems. They're called battlefield ventilators, and the function of these ventilators are to use them in emergency situations for anywhere between 48 hours and a couple of weeks on a patient who is critically ill, or in some cases a patient who they're trying to get off full ventilation systems and get them breathing again themselves.
So these 2 types would be used in what sort of settings?
So they'll be used in battlefield type hospital settings. So they won't be a replacement for the mainstream ventilators that operate within ICU units today, but they'll be used in scenarios outside of that environment. So these makeshift hospitals that were being built, or maybe even in ambulances, or actually in poorer regions of the world where they don't have ventilators. These are low-cost ventilators, priced, we reckon, in around the region about 5,000 to 10,000 euro. That makes it affordable for these regions where they don't have any ventilators at all, to help them enable a patient to breathe who is struggling with actually any condition, but in this case, COVID.
That catches up nicely to where we left off the previous conversation. The context is now set. How much progress have you made in the last 3 months?
Well, we've made some fantastic progress into the development of the technologies. We've gotten a lot of feedback from practitioners in terms of the ventilators and how they're operating. Things that we need to change in terms of making it better and safer, and to get better patient outcomes from the systems that we've been developing. We've developed in technologies that allow a consultant, for instance, to be able to remote monitor a patient. And to dynamically change the controls on the systems remotely. So that means that the consultant wouldn't necessarily need to be in beside the patient, for instance, in the ward. They could be at some remote location monitoring what's going on. And again, in critical situations where patients may be, ill, and you're talking about minutes in terms of the difference between maybe life and death in that kind of scenario, where a consultant will be able to modify and change remotely, for instance, the controls in the systems. These machines, that's what we're building them to do now. So we've made a lot of progress in that. Obviously, going through regulatory approval internationally is a slow process. There are derogations that are given for emergency use, but at the moment, in terms of, say, Ireland or in the EU, currently anyway, the requirement isn't to get a derogation there. So we're steadily going through all the approval loops that are required internationally to make these systems, mainstream down the road. And we'd be hopeful, even post-COVID, that actually these systems would have a place in the marketplace as a low-cost ventilator for developing regions.
And if you get approval, do you manufacture in Mullingar, or is that just where the design takes place?
Well, the design, we won't manufacture. We're a research and development organisation, and we will partner with manufacturing companies to build the units. I'd love to see it being built in the Mullingar or the Midlands region, or if not there, somewhere on the island of Ireland. And we are talking to a number of partners in terms of who might be interested in wanting to take this to market once we get through the next few stages in the regulatory journey.
How far away are you from that point?
Well, these things, I'd like to think they will go quicker. But when you're talking about a system that is a critical system to help keep somebody alive, obviously the tests requirements are quite extensive. So it actually it will depend. If it was under normal circumstances, it can take a couple of years to qualify a system like this. In the case of emergency use, if it's a case that we need to get a derogation, an exception made because something has become very critical. Please God, it doesn't happen during the winter months, and then we could look to get a derogation to be able to use these systems in an emergency type situation. And we did that with one of the ventilator systems in New York. In fact, the system that we developed in partnership with MIT, that system is being tested and was being tested on patients, shall I say, in New York there a couple of months ago, by way of example. But we got a derogation to be able to go do that.
Very good. Has the HSE taken any for testing?
They haven't. We haven't put them onto patients here on the island of Ireland yet. There are lab-based tests that are going on, and we, based on the fact that there's no immediate need within the hospital systems in Ireland, we're doing it offline at the moment. All the test and validation.
Well, let's hope that part doesn't change.
We would look at getting a derogation in the hospitals here if they need it today.
Which hopefully they won't, fingers crossed. Barry, just finally, that's obviously a high priority project, but would you give us a flavour of some of the other projects you're working on?
Yeah, well, we've been working on, with respect to the COVID thing, we've been working on developing of masks. And for instance, we saw what happened within the meat industry there recently with the spread of COVID within that environment where people are working in close proximity together. We've been working with companies like PMask and Tyndall Institute in Cork to develop a breakthrough mask that prevents the spread of COVID, prevents you spreading it or prevents another person in close proximity spreading it to yourself. It's basically a modified diving mask with a HEPA filter integrated into it that prevents the virus from going in either direction. And we think this is a game changer for those types of environments where you cannot help but have people working in close proximity to one another. That's going very well. We're supporting companies in the Midlands, great companies like Steripack, for instance, in the work that they're trying to do in terms of manufacturing of masks and other PPE that's critical to the HSE over the next while. And we're very focused on other areas as well, which are crucial. We haven't talked about in the whole area of climate change, which is the other big elephant in the room that we all need to be worried about. And we need to get to a situation of having zero carbon emissions from manufacturing facilities. It's critical. And that whole area of sustainability. And we're doing some great work there with a project actually called Symbio Beer, with St. Mel's Brewery and Penelto Foods there in the Midlands, where we're taking waste bread and instead of throwing it into landfill, we're using it to produce beer, for instance. And we're doing that at the moment. So there's a whole wide variety of research projects. We have over 63 companies doing work with this today, 33 multinationals and 30 small and medium enterprises in a whole variety of very interesting projects. And at some point, I'd be delighted to come in and talk to you about some more about those other research programs.
Well, indeed, we look forward to it. Never a dull moment. Barry Kennedy of Irish Manufacturing Research in Mullingar, thank you for taking our call this morning.